What screams I was emotional abused as a child. Noticing every little behavioral change or any change in the pitch of somebody's voice. I also feel a constant sense of walking on eggshells around everybody. I've always said I'm really in tune with reading people's body language, hearing the subtle changes in their tone of voice, etc. People can never lie to me or say something sarcastically, with ulterior motives without me picking up on it instantly. It's just always something I've had amazing intuition with, but I never thought to connect that with the abuse, trauma I grew up with. And that makes a lot of sense. My wife will examine all words and statements in conversations with even good friends, and point out where I could have framed something slightly differently or been slightly more considerate of others to avoid a minor negative reaction. Her father was unstable and could be abusive. She had to learn how to keep him happy at all times. I'm like this because I've learned that people just don't want to hear about my interests that aren't their interests. Also, many people who dislike your interests take it as a personal insult simply that you like it. Like somehow liking something automatically means you think people who don't like it are bad, losers, wrong, what have you. So I just try not to talk about my interests too much. Hard sometimes, though become very few people I interact with show any fire or passion for anything they do in their life. I didn't get this from my parents, but from my cousins and other extended family. As a guy, they kinda expected me to be like my other guy cousins who at least at the time weren't super athletic, but they loved outside activities and playing sports and stuff, but I just didn't like that stuff. I was very much content with playing my video games and stuff, and due to that I got sort of bullied by my extended family for being lazy, or weak, or fat, or slow, or being a nerd, or for being last in everything and not wanting to spend time with family. I will say the games we played were kind of fun, but they were mostly outside activities, and it became unfun when your family says not literally but basically says you're bad at almost all the games. Doesn't help that my aunts and grandma from that side aren't exactly the greatest of people, and the constant comparing of me to my cousins, it just got to me. And I at some point just said, fuck it, and I doubled down on my love for gaming, and grew extremely distant with them. And nowadays, especially due to COVID, I can't even have a general conversation with my cousins anymore because I'm basically the same, and they are all doing something, so yeah, sorry for the rant. My parents used religion to control us kids, and I remember being worried I wasn't a good Christian because my dad told me I talked too much about Lord of the Rings and Gilmore Girls, which I'd been into for about 6 months, but not the Bible, which I'd been reading before I could read. My brother-in-law pointed out once that if my sister and I get too positively excited about something, the other one will say something negative about it to calm them down. He thought it was really mean on both our parts, until we talked about it and we all realized my sister and I were subconsciously trying to help each other avoid punishment or criticism for liking something too much. My mother wonders why we don't hang out like friends. We have no common interests, and she constantly talked about anything I liked growing up. Anything I found that was the tiniest bit entertaining was called childish and mocked. She only recently stopped because she looked around and saw that nerdy isn't everywhere now. Except now she thinks that those fake comments about making money at home really easy on the computer are real, and she is pissed I don't do it. My mom did the same thing when I was a kid. Granted, she meant it in a less serious way, and more of just giving me a hard time way. But how was I supposed to know that when I was 4? I had no self-esteem as a kid, and I thought she was seriously roasting all of my hobbies. She got much better as an adult, which I'm thankful for. We had a great relationship now, but for a long time I told her nothing. Honestly, I don't think this is an issue with my parents necessarily. And I don't think they'd be wrong to tell me that honestly I shouldn't be constantly talking about things that don't matter in the larger scheme of things. However, I do feel weird when it comes to the idea of meeting new people and making friends. If I went to a specific place for a specific hobby, then at least I'd know people probably care. However, I figure most people wouldn't care. So I don't generally express my interests even if other people are talking about the subject. or ever try to give my opinion on things like art or whatever because it feels like what I think might not be of any value. My therapist told me about this when my engagement failed right before COVID, after 8 years together. I wasn't abused. My parents were immigrants that worked hard and raised us like they were, left to their own accord. We were latchkey kids, and I guess they thought the American school system will raise us and fill in the rest. I always assume someone is going to let me down, so I want to be fully prepared for a relationship rather than grow into one. And my engagement, because it was like I had one foot in and one foot out. It was self-sabotaging. Anyhow, live and learn. This thread is a glum tribute to the spectrum of abuse we can experience growing up. Helicopter parents that punish kids until they comply are just as traumatic as absentee parents who abuse children by forcing them to fend for themselves. I got the 1-2 punch of a mostly absentee suicidal dad who tried to rope me into his final act at a young impressionable age, when kids should be able to trust their parents, followed up by a crazy strict stepfather that I could trust to beat me physically to the point where I had to show bruises to a school teacher to get the prick to lighten up. As I'm reading the replies, it's morbid to guess what flavor each person's abuse came in. This is something I'm really struggling with right now. I grew up as the forgotten child, so now, as an adult, I feel like I have to do everything myself. Now, I've been with my boyfriend for a year now, and it's not uncommon for couples to recognize that they want to get married around this point. Issue is that I just can't quite see myself getting married with my BF. We're not a bad fit. Or I don't trust him. Or don't think I can rely on him, etc. It's more like I'm not quite ready for that, letting go of a lot of things that are directly tied to my hyper-independency. I know that for a lot of people it sounds silly, and to them sounds like underlying distrust for my boyfriend, but it's really not the case. Right now, my brain is wired to view things like sharing a bank account, putting both our names on buying a house, etc. feels like giving up a big part of my own independence, even though it really shouldn't be viewed that way. I just can't control the way I view it. It's a lot like I've only been able to see myself raising a family and doing all that stuff. My brain just never filled in the fact that someone would be there to do it all by my side. I am slowly getting better, and recently started seeing a new therapist who is helping me sort through all my childhood trauma. I also know that I'm a long ways from getting engaged with anyone anyways, so I'm using this time to better myself so I'll be a great wife. I wish I had this. I have the complete opposite issue. Which MO is even worse. I cannot function alone. If I don't have someone to help me with literally anything, I'm lost. I break down, literally crawl into a ball, and just freeze like that. Or get a very bad anger issues attack. I feel like my entire life I was treated like I was too stupid or too small to do anything, and suddenly as an older teen they expected me to do stuff on my own, and I just couldn't. I'm almost 26 and I can still barely function. My boyfriend, his mom, and anyone else have to constantly help me with anything adult-related issues because I just never understand anything. And before I got into my 20s, I wasn't even able to go to the store by myself and buy stuff. I couldn't. I would freeze, throat would close up, I would start sweating and shaking, hyperventilating, and I would stay frozen looking ahead. So yeah, I wish I was hyper-independent instead of hyper-dependent. I don't know when I will get better. I'm nearing my 30s, and the thought of my mother someday passing away and my BF breaking up with me terrifies me because then I don't know what I would do. I genuinely feel like I would just die. I'm now realizing my emotional abuse was very passive and most likely unintentional. Growing up in my late teens and in my 20s, it was always a thing where it seems I could never talk about stuff I wanted to talk about. People would always interrupt me mid-sentence to talk about what they wanted to talk about, whether it was related or not, and the conversation would just go on from there. I'd sit there in stunned silence, respectfully waiting for a break in the conversation to pick up where I left off. I didn't want to be rude to them like they were to me, treat others like you'd like to be treated, and all that. I'm pretty sure it was not intentional for the most part, but it has had lingering effects. I don't feel like I have anything of worth to say, or that my interests aren't worth talking about because they're boring and someone will just interrupt me. When I do get a chance to speak at length, I start to feel anxious, like now I'm just babbling and someone will interrupt any moment. Almost like some form of conversational agoraphobia. The longer I keep talking, the more exposed I feel. Seems like our perception of reality is so off from others, I guess you would say normalish people. Or we see the real world as it really is compared to most, and it can be quite brutal. I have this weird thing where if things get crazy, I can just shut off my emotions. I have to do this because any emotion I do feel is either anger or extreme dark sadness and despair. Then when I drink or smoke some weed, I get these feelings, but asking others and reading what I am feeling, it says what I am feeling is normal emotion. But since I'm used to not feeling anything, it can be insanely overwhelming and I just can't take it. My wife, who is my goddess, has been so patient and understanding. I don't deserve her. She has guided me in what being somewhat normal actually is. I will always be grateful to her for that, no matter what our future may be. I am here for her and the kids. So far, it's all I can muster or give some meaning to my being here. If it's the only reason I'm here, whether I want to be or not, then I can at least put the effort in and better there lives. We got lucky and got a good house before the market went tape. After a brutal battle in court and the lose of the family that put me into this hell, I will have our home that is only 7 years old paid off. And they will have security and a place that is their home, and they don't have to worry about the bank taking it. I want them safe and as secure as my po can make them if anything should happen to me. That sounds messed up, I guess. Go ahead and delete if off topic. Do the best you can with what you are given. There is no respawn. There is no time machine. Silly quote from Tremors 2. I always like D and am probably about to get wrong. Just doing what I can with what I got. Makes me chuckle every time I remember it. I would get backhanded or spanked for things as a kid and then teen. If I disagreed with my mom in particular, and it made her angry, she just slapped me. Here's the thing. I know she loves me, and she tried really hard to give me a better life, but just had no self-control when it came to her temper. To this day, though, I feel a tingle in my face and other location of frequent target like my bum anytime I have any disagreement with anyone. My body just remembers. When I speak to anyone at all, I am constantly evaluating what I have said, am saying, and what I want to say, and how to bring it in a way that I can fall back on my own words, and try to make sure everything is 100% politically correct. For instance, if I am making a assumption, I always state so in a few ways before I get to the point. I am constantly scared I will say something wrong, incorrect. Now, I consider myself quite good at twisting my own words and sentences, and I hate the reason why I can do this. Just realized I did exactly what I described in this message when writing it, and was purposefully avoiding certain points that could lead to questions I do not want to answer. I specifically learned after a while to only say to my father, I apologize, because saying I'm sorry for any little thing I did or said to trigger him made him go on a tirade about how I am a truly sorry, crappy, ugly, stupid person. It occurred to me just a few days ago at work that I carried that response with me till this day, and I never tell anyone I'm sorry, and that likely makes come across me this distant, uncaring, detached person in their eyes. Sometimes I just want to burst out and explain to someone, hey, I'm weird, and the things I say are odd sometimes. Or when I withdraw or am unsure what to say, I actually just really want to get to know you, or perhaps form a friendship. I just don't know what to do or say. But that would be even more odd and awkward, and that makes it also much more difficult. So I default to happy, positive responses all the time just to cover up the awkward uncertainty. Although I'm considered likable, unfortunately, it doesn't lend to lasting friendships. Also, never expressing any emotion ever, because as a child they got screamed at, shut down for it right away, resulting in them not being able to feel or express emotions in a healthy way later in life. I've been praised at work for my ability to stay calm in all situations. Little do they know that I've lost the ability to express emotion normally in chaotic situations. It's a weird superpower that backfires in normal day-to-day situations, and I am constantly having to remind myself how I'm supposed to react to things, like when a coworker is upset or has happy news. Hypervigilance. I always thought I was just really good at reading people, until I realized it was because I'm scanning for danger and making sure I know if anyone is mad at me. This makes me think of a very late, like after bar closing, meal I had at a popular local diner with some friends many years ago. We were all just swing shift workers tired from a long day, but it was Friday night and the bar club crowd was packing the place. Lots of ladies walking around in skimpy club outfits. As we're sitting there, one of the people I'm there with, a lady herself, comments, "You know, Peter Mangello, it's nice how you don't ogle all these women like the other guys here. I noticed that about you." To which I raise my eyebrows and tilt my head. I then proceeded to ask her if she meant how I didn't ogle the 3 women that just walked past to the bathroom, describing exactly what each was wearing, including the color of their visible thongs and bras. I then explained that just because I don't ogle and I know when I'd be batting out of my league, that doesn't mean I'm not paying very close attention. 0 self-esteem. Your mind bullies you, insults you. You're paranoid of what people think about you. You're afraid to form relationships, friends or life partners. You have a hard time trusting people. You walk silently. You speak quietly. You automatically assume the worst in any situation. You can't stand up for yourself. You're socially awkward. You're never happy or content. You say yes to everything even if you don't want to do it. You agree with the bad things people say about you. You compare yourself to others, then tell yourself you're worse, stupid, ugly, etc. compared to them. Assuming every person who's acting like they care about them will eventually betray them. My abusive dad's ex-girlfriend hated my mom and acted like a second mom to me for years and buttered me up. Then the literal day I turned 18, she had me write a false report about my mom being a bad mom towards my little sister that could have gotten her removed from the home. I realized the day after that I had made a mistake and that I was manipulated for years and that she didn't actually love me. Both of my actual parents are abusive in their own ways, but damn, it hurt coming from someone who I thought was on my side. Not being able to talk openly about what bothers you. Taking off your earbuds to hear what's going on outside of your room. Walking and doing pretty much anything as quiet as you can. Eating as fast as you can to avoid being yelled at during dinner. Getting faster and faster heartbeats whenever you hear a loud sound. This, and also having them on literally all the time, loud as hell, to avoid hearing the fighting you noticed when you took them off. And then subsequently developing tinnitus and an addiction to internet content thought you have to be consuming pretty much at all times. But hey, it helps distract from the tinnitus at least. I once had a conversation with my so. I don't remember the context, but I remember abandonment came up. I remember saying it's knowing at any moment the people you love could just abandon you. No matter how nice you are or how good to them you are, and there's nothing you can do about it. But you just kinda gotta ignore that and enjoy the day to day. Like you know it's a thing and just pretend so you can enjoy the now. I hadn't seen someone actually jaw drop before, but there he was. Found out emotionally preparing yourself for anyone and everyone to drop you like a hot plate isn't normal. This is the toughest part. Makes it terrible to create or maintain friendships. So many people just waiting to take advantage of nice people and use them. Even people you finally get in your life that you can trust 100% by most standards is great. Not for people like us. It's hard to feel anything or trust even if it could be your wife or husband. It's its own kind of terrible torture. The feeling alone in a room full of people, among other things. You can rebuild. Look for people that really do care and let them help you. Therapy. Cutting toxic people out of your life. Ask questions and let people help where they can. Best to all of you. Decision paralysis and extreme responsibility, fear of messing up. If they mess up, it's always their fault. And it always could have been avoided if they just thought more or researched more. In reality, a decision can be considered for a week and be right, and a year and be wrong. There are always unknowns. Risk is unavoidable. Children with high-pressure parents don't learn how to manage risk. They learn a mistake is always their fault, and ends in shame and punishment instead of growth and learning. I had "you're going to ruin your life" parents, and now I can't even go grocery shopping without stressing over whether I really want that snack, or should I buy this flavor or that, or what is my budget. If it's a decision bigger than a snack, I frequently can't make a decision at all and agonize for months or years until I'm forced into a decision by circumstance. 0/10 do not recommend. Extreme empathy. I used to think it was a superpower in a sense, but in reality it was because I grew up in a chaotic, sometimes violent household, and learned to read the room really well for survival. I'm 31, still trying to break people-pleasing behavior. My mother was a hardcore alcoholic. She died when I was 14, and when I got home from school she was always passed out. She'd usually wake up around sunset, and to this day I still get skittish around sunset. I never knew what I was going to get when she woke up, so I learned to read her mood in an instant and become whatever she wanted me to be. I can do that now as an adult, and while now I'm at the point where I'm like it. I am who I am, and if you don't like it, you can write off. It took me till 50 to get to that point, but I won't say that hasn't served me well. I can read people in an instant. Reading all these replies makes me wonder if I had trauma that I was generally unaware of. I know I was never abused in any way, but I guess being horribly sick for many years, having to leave school because of it, losing my mom at 16, and having a dad with BPD may have actually caused trauma, since I relate to half of these comments. That being said, extreme empathy is the worst but also the best. I'm able to easily connect with people, but I also basically feel every emotion they feel. All I want is to help people, and I can't ever give up. This had led to situations where the person in question just doesn't want help, and honestly is past the point of being able to help. But I just can't give up. I can't accept that. It may just be a function of hypervigilance, but if I walk through your house, yard, neighborhood, I'll basically get an inventory of everything in the area, and for buildings, a floor plan location of windows, vents, outlets, slide imperfections, bits of debris on the floor. I notice everything. If you're looking for something in your house, just ask me when I'm there. I either already know where it is because I've seen it, or I can make a couple of guesses where the item could fit. I've had multiple people tell me it's a bit weird that I can find things in their house just from walking through. Trying to hide things from the view of others. My family used to always hover over everything I did, and then told me how stupid it is and laughed at me for doing it. Now when someone walks into my room, I will immediately stop whatever I'm doing. I'll be watching a video about cars and click the X button at the speed of light if someone comes in because I have an irrational fear they'll just laugh at all my interests. It always ends up looking like I'm turning off porn or something. People pleasing. That usually manifests itself as an ability to say no or constant search for approval. Difficulty expressing emotions or not even feeling them from time to time. Being the one person always mediating conflicts or avoiding them altogether. Perfectionism. Extremely harsh self-criticism. Nostalgia is always painful, even with good memories. Never breaking rules or acting spontaneously without calculating every move beforehand. Tendency to get overly attached to the few people allowed in your inner circle. Talking and acting quietly in general. Sometimes unable to talk loud or scream. Always thinking everything will go wrong, and that's not worth it even trying. Substance abuse not related to having fun, but to achieve emotional numbness or disinhibition. Taking everything even remotely related to a criticism very personally. Even a simple disagreement feels like a personal attack. Having a hard time dealing with authority figures, being the best in class or the model employee. Repressed anger that usually is turned against the own individual or come out in outburst without a proportional trigger. Serious trust issues that can be borderline paranoid. I forgot. You blame yourself for everything.